Our next panel was exploring direct-to-consumer businesses. John Pennett of Eisner will moderate. He is the partner in charge of the life sciences groups and technology groups at Eisner. On his panel, which he will introduce, are 2 investors and 3 entrepreneurs building and supporting direct-to-consumer businesses. Thank you, John, and welcome to TiEcon.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks for having us here. We at Eisner are proud to support TiEcon. We support entrepreneurs through their journey with accounting, tax, IPO preparation, and capital markets advisory service from our offices in New York, San Francisco, Mumbai, and other offices. We have an outstanding panel today to talk about B2C businesses, focusing a little bit on beauty, fashion, and food. And so one of the questions to think about is, why did the organizers select this topic for our panel today? And the answer is that it's a super hot and it's an easily relatable business. The IPOs in this marketplace grew from about 27 to 43 deals in 2020, led by DoorDash. 2021 is off to another great start with The Honest Company, Instacart, and we'll learn a lot more about Poshmark later on today in our session. And we know some of the reasons why this is such a popular industry, right? So it's a high level of social engagement and content consumption. It's high margins, it's e-commerce enabled, and there's a strong connection to female founders and diverse founders. So let's go and meet our panelists that'll walk us through this and hear a little bit of their stories. So Arpeeta, would you start us off, please?
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Arpeeta Oberai. I'm the founder of Beauteani. We're a new indie beauty brand focused on lifestyle, wellness, and we offer products for beauty inside and out, a holistic approach to self-care that's focused on self-love and embracing who you are from the inside and out. I started Beauteani about a year and a half ago. It's been an interesting journey, exciting, lots to learn and more to grow, and I'm glad to be here.
Terrific. Betsy, would you go next, please?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Betsy Bluestone, and I lead scouting and partnerships for P&G Ventures. P&G Ventures is a startup studio within P&G where we work really to build new businesses outside of the core of categories where P&G currently competes. So I both look for technologies as well as how we go to market in all of the businesses that we build internally and with founders externally.
Terrific. Manu.
Hi, I'm Manu Rekhi. I'm a general partner at a venture firm called Inventus Capital. Coincidentally, Chetan, who'll hear from later today, is one of our investee companies. We invested in them in the seed stage all the way through the IPO, and it's an amazing journey. And prior to that, I was an entrepreneur, done a gaming company in the social media space. I ran MySpace, if you guys still remember that, and then Orchid, and sort of was the product manager and details on Gmail at Google, including Google Calendar, and then also did DoubleClick when they got acquired. And I also ran in the CPG, ran a wine company before I went to business school. So it's been a little bit of lots of different things, and I think you sort of end up having a journey where you can actually see some of those traits in entrepreneurs as well.
Thank you. It's good to go old school there with MySpace. That's pretty cool. Chetan?
Yeah, hi, I'm Chetan Pungaliya, co-founder, and I run engineering at Poshmark. Poshmark is a leading social marketplace for new and secondhand style for women, men, kids, pets, home, and more. Sort of by combining the human connection of physical shopping with the scale and ease and the selection benefits of e-commerce, Poshmark makes buying and selling simple, social, and sustainable. Poshmark has about 70 million all-time registered users in US and Canada. A sale is made about every second in the US. Our community is highly engaged. They're spending about 25 minutes a day on the platform. And we enable sellers, both small and big. And that's probably more relevant to this topic here, where we have also enabled brands to succeed by creating a following within their community and making their buying and selling simple as well. So this is a little bit about Poshmark, and I look forward to a great discussion here.
Terrific, thank you. And Ben, would you be our final panelist to be introduced there?
I'll round it out somehow.
Yeah.
Super amazing people. I'm going to have to share some notes with Manu in early MySpace days, whether it was Mike Jones or Tom Anderson. And there's a couple other connections to the panel too. Hi, everyone. I'm Ben. I've started a lot of TiEcons over the years. My original claim to fame in Silicon Valley is I was co-editor and editor-at-large of Mashable, the tech news site. Ran the West Coast, opened the West Coast office, wrote 2,446 articles in my 4 years there. Eventually I left. I wrote a book for HarperCollins called Captivology on the science and psychology of attention, why we pay attention to certain people and products and how to utilize that science to captivate others. Interviewed everyone from Sheryl Sandberg to Steven Soderbergh, David Copperfield, and the world's top PhDs in attention and memory for that book. Joined a bunch of boards, including the board of directors of Somasource and the Lila Jana Foundation, the huge AI data trading company. And then most relevant for this conversation is in the last 5 years, I have been a founder. I've been on both sides of the table. I co-founded Octane AI, which powers the conversational commerce and specifically the personalization for thousands of e-commerce brands through quizzes, messenger, and SMS marketing. We work with Shopify brands all across the spectrum, including Opti, which is a P&G Ventures brand, or went through the P&G program, and help them have a more personal experience with their customers and, go from third-party tracking to like really zero-party, getting to know you, building relationships, all that sort of thing. So super excited to be here and be on this panel of awesome people.
Great, thank you. So let's start off with our first question here. And Ben, I'm going to kick the question over to you to start there, since you were our finalist right there in the introduction stage. So how do small emerging companies compete on a global scale? And what does success look like for a consumer brand?
So to answer this question, the very first thing is there's just such a radical shift over the last 5-10 years where like e-commerce 1.0 was Amazon. You had to be on an Amazon, or you had to be on a giant, there was only one marketplace or two, or you had to be in retail. But now there's a whole bunch of tools and marketplaces, everything from your own Shopify store to Poshmark to all sorts of places where you can go and build a business and build a huge business really quickly. We've seen e-commerce brands go from like 0 to 50 million in a single year in the extreme cases. So like, what do you need? I mean, it really just is like any other kind of startup, which is, can you find a real pain point and a real need that people have? And fundamentally, if everyone has maybe like an example, beauty is a great example. They might have like everyone wants to present their best self, but is there some kind of way or some kind of pain point that hasn't been solved yet, or that you can solve better? That's like the core, no matter whether it is software or direct to consumer. But the difference now is it's super easy to go and scale. If you could find that right product, all these amazing products, tools, marketplaces, and ecosystems exist to help build and support you, to help you, have the technology that someone like an Amazon has to go and personalize your experience, or, have better conversations, or just even spin up your store in a very quickly. So like at the very high level, it really is about like, if you can find that product, like you can find a product that can resonate, all the tools are there now more than ever to go and build an awesome business, no matter where you are.
Terrific. So let's kick that over to Arpeeta. And so you're building obviously your brand. How has that process looked for you?
So for a small brand like mine, just like Ben said, there are so many tools out there now able to connect with your community, with the consumer, and get out there. And for a small brand like mine, something like an Instagram has been definitely the powerhouse to drive conversation, build community. And I think as a brand of my scale, where I find it most valuable and important as far as the map to success is building a community that goes beyond, you have your product, but how do you connect to your consumer, and having that authentic connection, and being there, mindful, aware, telling them that you care more than, just buy my product, I think has been, it takes time, but I think there's so much value in it. And because just like in beauty, there are so many masks, there are so many products. So why me? And a lot of people have great products. And I think having the time to invest in somebody and, show them that you're there for them as a brand, building that consumer loyalty, I think is super important to me. And I think that's where Instagram has been a great vehicle for me to connect with them and have those conversations, and also use it as a great marketing tool.
And are you supplying content as well for your customers to kind of build that loyalty and just provide more information about your products and wellness in general as part of that process?
Yes. So we are heavy into content building. We do a lot of tutorials, whether it's Instagram story, it's collaborations with influencers that are into beauty in general, but more so with the categories and how we focus on in masks and herbal teas. And we use that content and repurpose it to have people connect to it, again, authentically of, we're real people are using it. How are they using it? Education behind the ingredients, having a transparency and the ability for people to review. I think all feedback, whether good, bad, I think there is no bad feedback. It's always valuable and teaches us. And we love connecting with our consumers and sharing that information.
Terrific. Chetan, I'll ask you the same question there. In terms of you've obviously built a large following, a large audience. What were sort of the key ingredients to help you get there?
Sure. I think before I answer that, just sort of expanding a little bit on what Ben and Arpeeta have talked about, which is at Poshmark, there's lots of examples of sellers who started small. They started with selling resale on the platform, clothes out of their closets, then went and became professional sellers, grew to become professional sellers where they would actively source inventory, to then creating their own boutiques, to creating their own brands, fashion brands. And then as the next step, expanded even out of Poshmark. So they use Poshmark as a distribution system, but then have their own physical stores now and are moving to sort of other platforms. So there's definitely, I think, echoing a little bit of what Ben is saying, there are a lot of platforms out there, including Poshmark, that you can leverage to get there. As far as Poshmark is concerned, I think from a global expansion perspective, I think the way we approached it is we really first focused on the US, one country, US, really got our business model, our operating model, sort of smoothened it out, got it to scale. And then we moved to Canada, where, and we chose Canada because the payment systems and the shipping systems allowed us to keep the simple user experience, which is core to the Poshmark brand. And what we found was that we could replicate that the marketplace was thriving equally, if not faster, in Canada. So we took one country and applied it to another. And since then, we've expanded to Australia. And sort of we hope to repeat that model as we expand globally.
Terrific, awesome. Yeah. Congratulations on building a brand that's continuing to expand on a global scale. That's terrific. Yep. So I want to ask a question for the investors on the panel, and we'll start off with Manu, since you had invested in Poshmark there. So what are you looking for when you meet an entrepreneur, and kind of evaluating their ability to deliver on the promise, at a meaningful scale to you as a potential investor. Does this have the legs to become a sustainable business? What are sort of the characteristics that you look for?
Yeah, I mean, at the stage we come in, at the early stage, the seed stage, it's hard to sort of know what happens 6 years from now, 10 years from now, right? So you're taking a bet on the horse, right? On whether these two can actually make it happen, right? So if you can imagine when Manish and Chetan come in, to raise money for a fashion company, two middle-aged men, thinking they could actually break into a fashion space, most VCs wouldn't take that seriously, right? And I think that some of the things you look for, success isn't dependent on which business school you went to, which college you went to, or other pieces. Actually, it depends on grit, right? And do you have the grit to make it happen? Is there intellectual honesty? Have you been a lifelong learner? There's a whole bunch of things that actually make the ingredient for a great entrepreneur, right? In this case, with Manish and Chetan, we had invested in his previous company as well, right? A company called Kabuto, where they actually learned, and it was a sort of a precursor to Pinterest. If Pinterest, they happened before the iPhone invention. But they learned quite a bit from that process, right? And it was an exit. They had an exit, but it wasn't an exit to call your mom back home, right? But they were able to find a home for the company. But they learned quite a bit from them. So as an entrepreneur, you can go back and sort of say, well, I'm going to stay with the acquirer. I'm making a nice fat salary, and I'm done. Both of them came out and sort of said, how do I do this better? Like, what were the learnings that happened there? And I've spent a lot of time with Manish initially. And one of the key things he had was like, well, I'm not going to have a company which is dependent on advertising only. It has to have a commerce piece built in. So he took the best parts about Kabuto and sort of said, how do I build on top of that? And I think that's the piece of a great entrepreneur, that they learn and they actually blame themselves when things don't work. You don't blame the world for things not working out, right? And I think there's a whole bunch of other sort of pieces. So you look for intellectual honesty, fairness, and some of the other things I mentioned. And I think that allows you to make a decision. Now, the other piece we've always found that a first-time entrepreneur is a really good bet, right? A second-time entrepreneur that has failed or doesn't have a good success in the past is actually a very good bet, right? Just betting on success doesn't mean that you will find success going forward, because you end up having bad habits. Because people try to skip things because I've already been successful. I've done my successful startup, and the next one will be success, and that doesn't always work out. So I like taking bets on people that have that grit, they have the fire, they have a lot to lose, and they want to win. And with Poshmark, for example, we were at the crossroads of Series B, where the company actually had a brick wall with some of the technical stuff, and they were in the midst of their fundraising, and every VC walked away. And so we had to make a decision, what do we do? So I think in this case, a question about how do you know scale, given my background in social and gaming, there's patterns that I had observed, the smiley curves where network effects actually get your previous users to actually come and engage more. And I saw those patterns that I started looking at data that Poshmark had that I never expected an e-commerce company to actually have network-like effects that I saw, in the social companies that I'd done before. And so we ended up sort of saying, hey, even with the smallest fund on the table, we need to take a bet, because you saw scale and things that were not possible in a commerce company. And so we decided to actually cross our fund over, which is usually a no-no in venture, because you don't want to bail out a company with a new fund. And we also then put our entire IRA and 401k as well, to make sure that we also were taking bets that our LPs were not taking as well, right? And so we came in very strong. And that allowed the fundraising, the Series B, to actually happen and became oversubscribed. It went from being close to shutting the company down to actually, a few years later being an IPO. So I think you have to sort of not just be, a VC just looking at the company from a financial, but you have to sort of really dig in, understand the business as well as the entrepreneurs do, and to be able to make bets based on that. So, at the end, it's easy to sort of have hindsight of 2020, but in the midst of it, it's you have to make some tough choices, and you have to have belief in the entrepreneurs making that work.
Yeah, terrific, right?
One minor correction there, Manu. I did call my mom after the Kabuto exit, so and we're very happy and grateful to be surrounded by great investors like Kanwal and Manu here, who the the journey usually is never a straight line for an entrepreneur. It is never a straight line. There are lots of challenges, lots of moments where that support is critical from people surrounding you, whether it's advisors, whether it's investors. And I think that is something that the entrepreneur has to keep in mind as they make their decisions on how, what ecosystem they build around it.
Right. Was that phone call to your mom to tell her that you're going to move out of the basement, or?
Almost.
Betsy, I appreciate your perspective on this. Looking at from the investor perspective. Obviously, P&G Ventures is looking for different types of companies, but tell us a little bit about what you're looking for in that entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with our sweet spot is really pre-seed to Series A. So we really like entrepreneurs that are at the beginning of the journey. And there are a lot of reasons for that, not the least of which is those are the points where P&G capabilities are most relevant, right? When you're trying to understand the consumer, you're doing brand building, you may have work to do on manufacturing or supply chain. You're probably having distribution beyond direct to consumer, right? So those are the points where P&G Ventures is particularly interested in startups. From an entrepreneur perspective, we are a science-based company. So that's what P&G is. Everything that we build is really about technical superiority that the consumer notices. So we call it consumer wow. So the technology is really the core of what interests us in a particular business. So we have defined based on tons of consumer understanding where are the places where we want to build businesses. And then we really go out to look for entrepreneurs who are building technology or businesses in those specific areas. So technical prowess is core for us. And then I would say that we really do look for sustainable growth. So when you are looking at metrics, what does it cost to acquire a consumer? How fast are you building? Are you building profitably? All of that kind of stuff. That's really core to how we think about if a business can sustain its success over time. So lots of different elements, starts with the consumer, then to the technology, and then really as we think about the way that the business is scaling, is it doing that in an efficient, sustainable way?
Terrific. I know we're getting a little bit short on time here, so I'm going to ask each of the entrepreneurs on the panel to just maybe spend a minute or two or a minute or so just to kind of give a couple sentences on how did you come up with your products? How do you refine it? And how do you pivot those products along the way? Chetan, would you kind of start off that perspective?
Sure. I'm not sure how I can cover all of that, but let me just talk about sort of the genesis of Poshmark that might be interesting to your audience here. So, after selling Caboodle, like Manu mentioned, our founder and CEO, Manish Chandra, set out to build a community-centric platform that combined social network with a robust marketplace, which has a solid business model, and which allowed anyone to turn their style into boutiques. And this was this was a time, and this is important. This was a time when connectivity on mobile had become reliable. Social networks like Instagram had taken off, and sustainability was becoming a focus for the community. I think that perfect sort of storm was created, and that led to us starting a social marketplace for fashion.
Terrific. Thank you. Ben, a quick word.
It just reminds me of the entrepreneur journey because we've almost died several times, and there's actually an article in Forbes about it and how when we first started the company, I'll go as short as I can. When we started the company, it was Facebook Messenger and chatbots back in 2016. We were like, chatbots are going to be a thing, conversations with customers are going to be a thing. They need the same tools on messaging as they do on email. But we were still learning. We hadn't charged yet. There was all sorts of learnings that we had to go and do. We really realized and figured out then by talking to customers all the time what they were looking for, where the opportunity was. we really came down to e-commerce, and we saw it was the e-commerce industry was using our product really well. So we doubled down there. And from there, we just kept on talking to our customers. We found out that they really wanted to do the same things they were doing with Facebook Messenger over SMS. So we built that. And then our flagship product, the shop quiz, came about because we were talking to our customers and they were hacking our Facebook Messenger product to do quizzes where they would be like a beauty brand would ask like what kind of skin you have, what kind of color you're looking for. And they didn't have an easy way to build it. They would have to custom build it. They really didn't want to custom build it. There was no tool for it. And so we built the tool for them. And that took off like a rocket ship for us. And we actually just got named the best storefront app by Shopify. And that's only because we kept on talking and listening to our customers and tweaking and not dying. We always found a way to not die, which is an underrated trait when it comes to entrepreneurship.
There you go. Conversations can, right? Absolutely. Arpeeta, your thoughts?
Sure. So, for me, when I launched my brand, we had, two categories, inner and outer beauty. And when doing it, one of the things I wanted to do was stick to a very tight product offering at first. So under each category, having one specific type of product. And as we launch, seeing how things work. And again, just like Ben said, really speaking to the community on what are their thoughts, what's resonating, what's not, take their feedback. And of course, the time to pivot and change and do that is, it takes time. However, during that time, it's nice to have those conversations, whether it's small breakout groups, it's an IG live to get people's feedback on what they would like to see, whether it's packaging related, whether it's product formulation, what are some things they're looking that they would like to have. And I think once it launched, now it's been over a year, it's nice to see what is sticking and having ideas on, okay, what could be that next thing based off of that. So I found value in spending that first year on really seeing which products are, there and in it to win it and how we can grow from there.
Awesome. Terrific. So we just have a couple minutes left, and I'd like each of you to kind of give a sentence or two of advice that you would give to the entrepreneurs who are listening in on the program today to help them on their journey. So Betsy, can we start with you? Sure.
I would say focus relentlessly on your customer or your consumer. Is one of the things we've learned over the last 14 months. There's been so many pivots, so many changes that entrepreneurs have had to make. And those that have done it successfully were just laser focused on understanding how the market was changing for their target. Awesome. And so I would say there's a lot of great upside and inspiration that comes from just talking to the people that are going to buy your product. So I'd start there.
Yep, great. Manu, your sentence?
The main thing I would sort of say is if you have an idea and you have the grit, go do it. Leave that pushy job you have at a large company, because you will never know if it will work if you don't give it a shot. And it's not an easy journey. You have to be a little bit crazy, a little bit nuts. And rebellious, but it works. And so if you can actually really get it done, I would actually, take the plunge. And by the way, Chetan and I have agreed to sit on table number 28 at noon for half an hour or so. If anybody wants to come join and ask questions, because I know the span's never long enough to have all the questions actually. Terrific.
Chetan, your thought?
Yeah, besides the focus and grit that was covered, I think one advice I have is, as you build up your company, is to create a framework for the team to thrive. And what that looks like is a set of core values that guide the team's interactions and decisions. Have a mission that does provide purpose, and really actively cultivate a culture that is unique to your organization.
Okay, terrific. So we're pushing up against the limit here. So Ben and Arpeeta, I'm just going to ask you to give us a sentence or a word for your advice.
I'll go quickly. Reverse engineer your KPIs. More specific of advice, which is just people go and raise money, for example, and they say things, but they didn't actually do their research. If you're going to raise for a seed round, go ask Series A investors what numbers you would need in order to go raise the round after. And then if you tell the seed investors what exactly you have to do, and that's your plan, you're much better off as a business and as a person and as a company.
Yep. Arpeeta?
So I think all of them covered what I would want to say. The only advice I would say is that, it's a long journey. There's a lot of ups and downs. And I think learning to embrace failure is more of a learning opportunity is super important throughout. And it should be something that you champion yourself for, because it definitely builds your resilience and something that's very important through all the ups and downs.
Terrific. And be true to your culture. So our time is up. So thank you to our panelists for your insights and your wisdom. I'm sure all the entrepreneurs and audience members appreciated it. I know the next panel is here already. So Shannon, I'm going to kick it back to you.
Thank you, John. So to keep us moving, I just want to thank John and everyone on the panel, Arpeeta, Betsy, Manu, Chetan, and Ben. Thank you for that conversation. I know it could have gone on for another hour.